Hello, this is Theodore Reynolds, Mindtree Exponential. I'm Operator Prime, and if we walk over this way, we'll get ready for the race. It's just about to start.
On your marks, get set. Oh!
What race are we watching? What's the goal? Well, here's Max. He's running by. Let's follow him and ask him. Max, why are you racing? Well, I gotta get there. I gotta go. Hurry. Come on. Max, who are you racing? I don't know. I gotta hurry and go. Max, where are you going? How long's the race? I don't know. I'll see you later. I'm in the lead. Well, that was Max. We'll get back to Max later. Today on the podcast, we're going to be discussing optimal productivity. To understand what I mean when I say optimal productivity, we'll compare two people in a great parable of Mindtree X. The parable of Max versus Opti. Now, life is a race, so it begins. It's beginning earlier and earlier in terms of education, so you get preschool and pre-preschool and prenatal preschool. And these kids are getting educated at an ever earlier age. The race is intense, and Max is running for his life, just trying to keep up. And what does that do to someone who's sprinting through life? Well, the struggle with that kind of mentality of sprinting through high school, for example, the race doesn't end over this ridge, and sprinting to get there isn't going to help you. You may just burn out. Whereas we have Opti, who is the optimal productivity racer, and he holds a steady pace. He's not sprinting because he knows that life and learning are a lifelong journey, a lifelong process. Getting a diploma, getting a degree does not end the race of learning. And because this race is not a sprint, Opti treats it as a marathon, and his productivity will last and last. Now let's come back out from the parable and into the homeschool situation. As a parent of a homeschooler, I have the opportunity to work from home, to educate myself from home, and that allows me to do in 30 hours what most people can do in 40. Simply because I'm more efficient with my time. I don't have to spend any time traveling to work. I don't spend time in meetings, or it's just much more efficient. My personal hygiene is more efficient. The efficiencies are small, but spread throughout the whole operation of my day. However, from an outside perspective, it looks like I'm being lazy or underproductive, and that I could be working 50 hours, specifically since I don't have to spend any time driving. That saves me time and energy that I could put towards my business. However, as with learning and young students, you can't put 50 hours of learning into a brain. It simply won't accept that much information. It can't grow that fast. You can stuff it in there, but it's a bucket. No, it's not a bucket. A brain isn't like a bucket, but it doesn't have the capacity. And pushing it up to 50 hours won't increase the amount of learning. And pushing it up to 60 won't increase. And actually pushing it up that high will work against learning, and it'll begin to decrease it, revealing a bell curve of productivity. And so we see Max and Opti, and Max is sprinting. But over time, his productivity will decrease because he's going to burn himself out. Also, someone who's working 50 hours on anything may or is likely not spending enough time on other important aspects of their life, which will eventually impact their full productivity. So spending 50 hours a week at a job while producing income that solves a lot of problems will reduce a person's ability, Max's ability, to maintain relationships within his family and his friends and his extended family and his community. And while that doesn't bring up money, those relationships are a form of wealth. And that's tax-free wealth. And there's a lot of other benefits. So we have a ratio, a 30 to 30 to 30 ratio. And if you break your work week into 30 hours for work, 30 hours for relationships, 30 hours for personal maintenance and care and interests, you get a nice stable balance, a nice stable output. Whereas Max, he's getting one tremendous bar of output, but all the other bars of his life of output are very low. So Opti, because he's producing well across the board, is actually producing significantly more. And while Opti is producing less, perhaps, and Max seems to be producing more, in the short term, in the long run, as Max burns himself out and his productivity crashes, Opti is growing stronger across the board. All of these different categories of productivity are increasing over time, not decreasing. He's not burning them out. He's becoming more productive. And his extended life productivity increases his overall lifetime productivity. Hello, we're back with later on in the race. Max, how are you doing? I'm not doing so well. Max, you don't look great. What's going on? I thought you were leading. I think I am. I think you lost him, Max. I don't know. Where am I? Isn't the end coming soon? I think it is, Max. Well, I think I'm gonna win. Well, good luck, Max. Maybe you should stop and get some water. No, I can't stop. I gotta keep running. Max, out! This principle applies to young students as well as adults. Students that try and burn through high school only to go graduate and find that college is exactly like high school, only more of it. And there's a good 8 to 10 years ahead of you if you want to continue in formal education. It's a very daunting realization to face after you've just sprint through high school, trying to get this race won and be done with it, so you could finally slow down, take a look around. But you can't, because universities will just put you in another race. This one, a race against other students, of course, and globalization puts you in a race against other students around the world, but it also puts you in a race against costs of paying for the privilege of being in the race, which adds a whole new depth and weight of stress on your life. So this can lead to burnout again. And what does it mean for burnout? So a student who burns out can be producing really well, doing the hard work of math and writing papers and all this formal stuff. But since there's no end in sight, they can ditch and drop out. This can happen at any level. And dropping out is relative. They can drop out meaning they're still enrolled and they're still showing up for class, but they're not paying attention. They're not working. They don't see a point. They've dropped out. They've had what's called output failure. And that's like a camel who has that final straw. It breaks them. And where they were 2 seconds ago carrying this tremendous weight, now they're carrying nothing because they've broken apart. They've experienced a burnout. And Max, if he's not careful, he may have a heart attack. Or one of his relationships may fail. And having a heart attack or having a major relationship fail will dramatically decrease productivity. Sometimes catastrophically. When considering productivity in the 20th century, both in learning and in money creation and wealth creation, it's important to remember that time and space are two sides of the same coin. They're connected. They're relative. So it looks like Max is ahead. It looks like people who are making lots of money may be getting ahead. But time is on the side of Opti. His productivity will stretch a greater distance over years of life and hopefully reach the point of passing on wealth through becoming a grandparent, which in terms of human capital is the most productive people will ever be in their life in many ways. The education that a grandparent passes on to a grandchild, if you compare that to the price of a university education or the cost of K through 12 education, the years spent with a grandparent are even more valuable. And if you put a monetary price on it, we should all be trying to reach grandparent status, because that makes us wealth producers in the nation, especially in the field of learning. In previous podcasts, how the brain is held within the vehicle of the body, and the body has limitations, just like a machine. And that's where the industrial age took humans and put them in cogs into these giant factories. And the rules of management were designed for mass production, maximum output. Because that's what machines can do. You can push them all the way to the limits. Race cars are meant to be driven on the edge, driven in the red. And Max drives himself in the red because that's what's expected of him. The student and the career worker, because that's the remnants of the industrial mindset, the industrial age mindset. But in the 21st century, hard steel and GDP figures and money are not the form of wealth that's most valuable. In the 21st century, it's human capital. And human capital is very much more like organic life that has limits and cannot be treated like a machine. Like a tree, the brain and the human capital of education must be produced optimally. There'll be waste. There'll be time spent. You cannot rush a tree's growth. You can only encourage it and support it. You can fill to stamp harder and heat up more with more electricity. But a tree will die if you give it too much fertilizer. A brain will atrophy and burn out if it's pressed too hard. So with an optimal mindset and an understanding that human capital is a long-term operation, decades it takes to grow sufficient human capital in the 21st century. But that's okay, great process, a wealth generating process. And once you take that perspective, and the homeschool of the 21st century is based on a long-term perspective. Once you take on that, the race changes. There's no stress on you to finish. Hurry and finish is gone. The stress on your heart, the stress on your consciousness, on your accounting mind, wondering what the costs are lifted, alleviated to some degree. Of course, they remain, but they're not pushing you so hard that you're in a constant state of alert, where Max is, where he's burning himself into the ground, and he'll literally burn himself into the ground by the time he's 70 if he's not careful. Whereas Opti has the chance to spread their education out over a lifetime. And each year that he lives deep into his life and being optimally productive grows like compounding interest. Each year becomes more valuable than almost all of the years combined previous. So we want that human capital to grow for decades and decades, because it just becomes more and more powerful. And the strategy to do that is not the same strategy for maximizing output. Instead, you must encourage and coach for optimal productivity. For a great infographic on the parable of Max versus Opti, please go to mindtreex.com. There you'll also find extended blog posts, chapter-length blog posts with premium expert support for all the concepts I present in these podcasts. Thanks for listening.